Well, we're shifting gears here. We're covering just about every kind of content that's been affected by this migration to digital. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the oldest medium of them all, the print medium, and some of the massive changes that are underway there with e-books and digital publishing of various sorts. And Federico is going to share with us some of the views from Mondadori Digital, where you manage the digital team there. Is that right?
I'm the head of commercial solutions, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
If you'd like to stand at the podium, you can do so if you'd like, if you have slides. Otherwise,
it's okay. I guess we can do it from here.
Okay. Can you bring up Federico's slides, please, from Mondadori Digital?
All right.
Oh, here's the clicker, so you can manage it yourself. Thanks.
There.
Right on. Thank you.
So you are right. As a matter of fact, possibly printing is the first form of media, but
It's
you
certainly the first
skipped.
packaged
I
media.
think you skipped oral tradition here.
Right, of course. Right. Speech. Yes. You want to take it all the way back, right?
Yeah. So Mondadori is a company based in Italy. We're mainly based in Milano. It was born in 1907, so it celebrated its century about 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a company that's been there for a while. As you can see from the slide, the consolidated revenues for 2010 amounts to quite a large number. As a matter of fact, 1.5 billion euros. It employs 3,649 people, and it published 2,379 new books last year. We also published 42 magazines in Italy and 27 in different other countries, 27 in France, and we have the so-called Grazia network, which is published in 17 different countries, and becoming larger and larger every day. There are 21 countries, as I was saying, where international editions of our magazines are available in general, so we do not only have Grazia magazine around the world. We own a national radio station, a privately owned national radio station, which is called R101, which averages about 3 million listeners per day. And as far as our digital compartment, as you can see, there are about 710 million page views on websites on a monthly basis. We also have 517 stores, which offers books, of course, but also consumer electronics and many other products around all over the country. So this is definitely the group in brief. I have another slides which shows how we make our revenues, and as you can see, books actually accounts for a large part of the whole pie, 23 point, sorry, I can't see the color right now. 23.3, then as you see also, Italian magazines and French magazines are very important slices of the pie, along with advertising, which is mainly gathered in Italy. Of course, the revenues from the digital compartment are not shown here because they're spread horizontally.
Across everything.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Okay. It seems like it's a missing piece of your pie.
No. Actually, this actually tells you how integrated the digital compartment is.
I see.
It being on a cross revenue, considered as a cross revenue base, it just spreads all over the compartments.
And so the French magazines, the Italian magazine group, each have their own digital initiatives, and it rolls up into that magazine's P&L. I see. Cool. And did you want to tell us a little bit about your digital initiatives? Do you have a minute to share with us? I got a chance to see the Roma book, which I thought was pretty awesome. It's kind of a new version of a book. It's really taking advantage of what tablet computers can do.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're very proud, of course, of this application which we launched. Let me just advertise it. It's called Rome Virtual History. Not only because we made it, but of course because we got acknowledged as one of possibly the best applications that were released this year, by Steve Jobs in person. As a matter of fact, when he gave his keynote speech, he was talking about like wonderful applications that are being delivered on iPad. And that was the very moment when images of our app were shown during the keynote speech. Of course, we all thought that it was a joke when we were told, because we couldn't believe it. But then we realized that it was true, and actually the number of downloads that we gathered thanks to that was just something I cannot release, of course, but was better than any other form of advertising we could have.
No doubt about it.
We had it for free, which was wonderful.
If you want to get a sense of what a digital book truly can be, where you're able to kind of dive into the material and browse through it and see a historical city recreated in a way where you can navigate through it. You should definitely check out the interactive version of Roma, and maybe during the interval you can show that to people who are interested.
I have my iPad here.
Cool.
So.
Well, I'd like to get into the discussion, so let me introduce some of the other speakers. Charlie Warburton is the managing director of Firsty Group in the UK, and they provide a range of services for publishing companies. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your business?
Sure.
Do you have slides as well?
Clicker, yeah.
Okay.
I was going to allow that to load up gradually, but frankly, it gives you a pretty good cross-section of what we're about. We provide digital we think of ourselves as a digital services partner to the publishing industry. We're based out of the UK. We began life as a web development house about 14 years ago. We began to focus on the publishing industry almost exclusively about 2 years ago. We provide ebook conversion, app development, e-commerce solutions, principally for small to medium-sized publishers, and interestingly, some of the larger publishers as well now. We're most excited at the moment about our services that we're now providing direct to authors. I think the empowerment of authors is a big issue for the publishing industry to embrace and for publishers to embrace. We've had some success in the app marketplace. I think we have been burnt a few times, like a few other people as well, with some unrealistic expectations about what we might be able to achieve. And I think our clients have as well. And so we now go to market with a low cost or low upfront cost and a revenue share proposition, which works well for the majority of our partners. We're also engaged in educating our clients. The publishing industry, the print publishing industry, has a bit of a staid reputation. Although the bigger players are very active in the digital space and are integrating it within their business, and I'm sure you guys are, some of the smaller players are a bit like bunnies in headlights. They don't know what to do, they don't know where to go, so they stand still. And they're kind of about to get run over or already being run over. So we spend quite a lot of time educating our customers about what is happening in the digital marketplace and what is not happening, as importantly, I think, and we provide information and news to them as well.
Super. While we're continuing with introductions, Tim is from Visual DNA, and Visual DNA is a company that I have a personal connection with. I met this company several years ago. I was very impressed with what they were doing, and I recently joined the board of directors there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Visual DNA software and the solution that you provide to publishers?
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. So my name's Tim Evans. I joined Visual DNA October last year. Prior to that, I was at Google for about 4 years, where I was product manager of AdSense and had the pleasure of working alongside Christy and others. And now at Visual DNA, I'm working alongside a really talented bunch of people. We wanted to essentially create a platform that allows users to connect and share their needs, motivations, and desires with publishers and commerce as well. So I just want to take you through essentially an opportunity, rather than just pushing Visual DNA. I just want to talk to you about an opportunity that exists right now and what things have actually just recently come together to allow this opportunity to exist. And the opportunity is really for all of you who are publishers and content producers to actually know for the first time and be able to segment your audience in an unparalleled way. So some of the things that you're able to do if you do that is allow brands to have unparalleled reach to really kind of fine-grained sections of your audience. And it enables you to kind of bundle up your site's inventory in an entirely new way. In addition, you get a kind of really in-depth perspective on the kind of users you have and how that's changing over time. So I'll just take you through a couple of those innovations that have happened. So what's changed to allow this to happen? Well, the first thing that happened in the display ads inventory is this was really pushed from the buy side, this concept of retargeting. And the display inventory had previously been just a kind of like a push technology. So, you know, a user would just see whatever ads were being pushed out by advertisers. The systems were all pretty dumb. There wasn't too much logic in deciding what ad to show. But for the first time with retargeting, you're actually able to essentially show an ad to a user who's engaged with your site, no matter where they are on the internet. So that was something that was created for the advertiser side. What I'm really talking about today is how you as publishers can harness this same technology. The ads ecosystem, the display landscape, is really rapidly changing, and this was put together by GCA Savian to represent the display ecosystem. You know, it's extremely rich and complex, and I think over the next 10 years we're going to see a lot of consolidation. But one of the opportunities we've got right now is for publishers to actually own some of this data as part of this data economy that's now started to exist in the display ads ecosystem. Two of the really important players out of that previous diagram that I wanted to just draw attention to are DoubleClick Ad Exchange and the AppNexus Ad Exchange. They're both real-time bidding systems that essentially monetizes unsold inventory from publishers' websites. So when you're trying to monetize your site, obviously you can't sell every single impression directly from with your sales teams. So the rest of it is now, thanks to a lot of the plumbing that's been put in place over the last year, available to buy through these real-time bidding systems. The value of an impression is not equal. So this is really important, and this is why there's an opportunity here. If you bundle up your inventory and using audience segments, you can actually increase the value of the impressions based on who the user is. And you can see here, the more valuable a user is, it's down to how much data is available. So if you've only got, for example, you know, run of site or contextual information about the whole site, the impression is worth so much. Whereas if you have a lot of information about the user that the user's declared, the impression is worth a lot more. For example, you know, let's say there's a car ad campaign and somebody's looking for somebody who's in the market for a test drive, and you know that a user is in the market for a test drive. That impression at that moment is worth a lot more than it would be shown to another user who hasn't passed their driving test, for example, or something. This is an example of the kind of way that you can segment your audience. This is something we've come up with, just kind of iterating over what we've found to be useful to advertisers and marketers in terms of the kind of audience they're trying to reach. It's not set in stone, it's something we're trying to evolve over time. And one of the reasons that I think this is really useful is it kind of divides the users up into kind of essentially 13 life areas, and then within each of those is an audience segment that you can actually target with ads. Now, the way that I suggest that you do this is, well, there's a couple of different ways. I'll just go through it quickly now. One way is if you use the Visual DNA system, we actually give you this data so that you can then essentially segment the users of your site and see how it's changing over time. And the way that we do this is with a fun interactive visual quiz. We found that this has an 85% completion rate, and users find it really fun and engaging, because at the end of it, they also get recommended content and personality profile feedback as well. This originally started as a social network we created called Universe, and obviously, you know, with the rise of Facebook, we realized we should refocus our business efforts, and hence the new focus is now on display advertising and how that can benefit publishers. So people take this fun interactive quiz, and at the end of it, they get a personality profile. And these are just some of the partners we're working with. In terms of the methodology, what you get at the end is based on essentially the way that you've been tagged as a user. So we can actually pick out the content that's most relevant to you. And you also get, depending on the site, you know, different classes of recommended content. So you can have recommended videos, recommended articles, and it can be either real-time or based on sort of static RSS feeds you've got. Users fully opt in, so privacy is taken care of. This is just an example of a page that's been enhanced with some recommended content on the LA Times. So I suppose, just to sum up, what I say is, you know, take this opportunity to really get to know your audience, increase the value of your display ads inventory, so to wrap up here. And I'd say, you know, the time is right now because of all the architecture that's been put in place through the, you know, really fast-paced changes that have happened over the last year. You're now actually able to do this and increase the value of those impressions quite significantly.
Thank you for that. So let me see if I can summarize then what I just heard, because it was quite a lot, a quick tour. Federico and Mondadori, one of the things that you're putting forth is the idea that the value is in the product, the value is in the book, or the value is in the magazine. Where for Firsty, you're in the services business, so the value of what you offer is in the services to publishers to enable them to get to new customers on digital devices. And with visual DNA, the value has actually shifted over to the audience. So if you're in the, say, the newspaper business, many of your customers are newspapers, they're putting out free content and they're mining the audience for data that is then resold in the form of higher value advertising. Did I get that right? I mean, is that a fair assumption?
Yeah,
I may not have characterized you quite right.
As a matter of it's not working.
No,
Yeah,
no,
it is. As a matter of fact, I totally agree with this sentence, and it's definitely our philosophy. Rather than being product-centric, we have to become customer-centric.
How
And
hard is
that's-
that for a publishing company? Your company is over 100 years old, as you pointed out.
Well, it's not difficult because a lot of websites have been built in the meantime, and by a single sign-on that allows you to understand what your users' attitudes are, you're definitely going to be able to target them accordingly.
Okay.
And this is definitely something we're putting a lot of effort in, and as a matter of fact, a lot of people that were working at Vodafone within CRM were hired at our place just to make sure that this is definitely taken care of.
So you're rapidly building out the capability to know who
Of
your audience
course.
is.
And
Okay.
where do you get them, if not at an operator's site?
Okay.
Operators know how to do CRM, don't they?
Right on. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Go for it, Charlie.
I'm impressed that you're doing that. I have to say my experience is that the vast majority of publishers are not in any way connected to their end user and ultimately their customer. They would be sort of bottom of the pile in terms of consumer engagement as far as I'm concerned. And I think they face a real challenge in embracing Web 2.0 and the whole social side of it and getting to grips with who their customer is. And more importantly, I think coming back to what Tim said is you know, what their buying behaviors are. And I think that the challenge for publishers now is really about making that connection and finding partners that will enable them to do that cost effectively.
And of course, the more resistant or uninformed traditional publishers are, the better for you, because that's an opportunity for you to sell in. Did I get it right?
It's a difficult sale.
And has your experience been the publishers you work with, do they embrace this? Are they excited about the digital opportunity, or is there resistance to digital in general? Are they sort of, you know, passionately maybe connected back to this old idea of a book, this thing that's been around for 500 years?
There are so many sound bites from various conferences and digital conferences, and everybody talks about digital, but people still think content, and then they think digital. They need to think content, digital, they need to think transmedia, they need to think about all of these things at the same time. They obviously have a lot of content already, so they're revisiting they're visiting the digital marketplace for the first time on a lot of occasions, and finding it pretty difficult to get to grips with how they should be reaching their audience, on what platform, what experience they should be creating, etc., and how to do that at a price that's going to make sense in a time when actually getting any data about which apps have been successful, which ebooks have been successful, how successful have they been, what's the return been, it is pretty tricky.
So there's not great data in terms of publisher sales data. It's not even that widely available.
Proprietary. I mean, for these guys, I guess, they've got lots of examples internally of what succeeded, but for the broader marketplace, accessing that sort of transparency is pretty tough.
And we're at an interesting point because it's a little bit up for grabs. Who gets to control this customer relationship? Certainly, you're taking steps towards establishing that connection, but I've worked with hundreds of authors who seek to have direct communication with their audience, and in fact, the brand name for the consumer is the author that they admire, and they're probably connecting with them on Facebook, and every decent author has a Facebook fan page now. But I would imagine in some respects, Firsty has that ability as well, that you can establish those direct connections with the buyers of ebooks and establish a customer relationship that way, where you're doing the transaction.
Yeah, and Federico, I'm sure will agree. I saw you nodding there, but author empowerment, I think, is a big challenge for publishers. How can we empower our authors to embrace the digital age, but also develop that sort of knowledge of our customer base without losing grip or of our relationship with the sales of our ebooks or our apps? How do we empower?
So in a way, it pits the author against the publisher, and there's a little tension introduced there in this arena.
I think there's a little tension. I certainly feel it from literary agents and from authors. Publishers might dismiss it.
And it doesn't help that Apple, on the other end of the equation, is saying, we control all the customer data. And by the way, we control the customer,
Absolutely.
and we've got the billing relationship, and no, you can't have any of that. What's your relationship with a company like them? I mean, obviously they're very flattering to you, but ultimately for magazines, they control the subscriber relationship entirely.
Well, I have a home in London, and whenever I'm there, I just go out with them for lunch, and I always pay. I'm just kidding. But we befriended very nicely. As a matter of fact, of course, everyone understands what the logics are at the moment. So, and nobody's really happy with them,
Yeah,
for sure.
and that's certainly true with magazine companies I've
It's
worked
a matter of sustainability, and I think I read yesterday something about Financial Times being unhappy with the way things are going, considering other ways of promoting their digital copies around the world. Alternative ones, I mean. I think we all need to come to terms and find out a sustainable business logic that will enable all of us to make money, of course, but they need to understand, of course, that products which are being delivered, cultural products are expensive, of course, they've always been, and I'm sure we'll find a way to work all together.
Very optimistic.
Yeah.
What's your relationship like with Amazon? They've already begun to publish authors, and so you know, with Amazon, if you have an idea for a book and you'd like to simply go direct to the Kindle, no publisher required. Amazon fills that role. What does that portend for the future of a publishing company?
Well, as far as Mondadori is concerned, Mondadori owns a bookstore, which is called Bookstore Online, which comes from an old partnership with Bertelsmann's group. And so we have our own bookstore. As a matter of fact, we publish ebooks as well. So, so I'm not very much in concern with what Amazon does. Of course, they're a global company. We're just an Italian one. I just believe that giving an opportunity to everyone to publish their own works is just a great thing for a better understanding of what the cultural offer can be around the world. Of course, I'd like them to come to me rather than going to Amazon.
I see. And yet, on the other hand, mainly your goal is to sell books. And so however you can get a book in someone's hands, that's a good thing, right? All right.
I think there might be an interesting play for individuals, and the growth in self-publishing might back this up, for the bookseller to begin to publish print. And I think there may be opportunities for self-publish, and Barry Eisler and Jay Comrath are a couple of well-known self-publishers. Barry just turned down a $500,000 advance for his next 2 titles to self-publish, on the basis that he felt he could obviously get a greater return over a far quicker period. And there may be an opportunity there for him to negotiate with a Barnes & Noble for an exclusive print release of his title. There may be some interesting opportunities in switching the business model a little bit.
It's becoming a little bit more like music, where artists, individual artists can create their own label. They might still be distributed by a major record company, but they get to have a little bit more control over their catalog and what they create and how they produce it. So do you think that's a legitimate analogy to say it's becoming more like music, where artists create their own labels? No.
Possibly, yeah. Possibly it is. I think publishers get nervous when we compare ourselves to the music industry, but I see the same things emerging all the time.
Oh, because of the economics.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, that's where the money goes.
Okay, fair. Well, we'll get to that question shortly, so brace yourselves for that. I guess to continue with the analogies, your company services many different types of companies. So you certainly work with print, magazine, and newspaper companies, but you also work with TV companies.
Yep.
Have you found a greater acceptance in one of those fields or another for this type of audience profiling and audience segmentation? You know, is there one group that's a little bit more accustomed to that idea?
I think certainly some sectors, such as e-commerce, online, essentially when you're trying to drive an online conversion, those kind of advertisers really benefit the most from this ability to target particular audience segments.
Because their bread and butter is the acquisition of customers. Okay.
Just a small point, and be really interesting to hear you guys' feedback on this. Is I think it's fascinating the way that when you buy a DVD now or a Blu-ray, there's this idea that's been mentioned in this conference about you kind of own a copy in the cloud. And so maybe this idea of having to choose between physical media and the version in the cloud, that decision might go away at some point maybe, and maybe you retain an option to have the physical version, if you like, at some point in the future. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I'm happy when they buy both, for sure. It's likely to turn into a cloud thing, for sure. But of course, what you need to do as a distributor, you need to offer all the chances you can have. I mean, all the platforms have to be served. So as far as there's demand for that, I think we need to fulfill it. But it's definitely something you have to look at in terms of revenues. Of course, it's always a matter of revenues. The day the sale of CDs and DVDs becomes, say, unsustainable, I guess it'll just go.
Well, since we're on that subject, I'm on record for predicting that print publishing as we know it will vanish in 5 years. Well, I still feel I'm a passionate book buyer and I have a huge collection of books, but my sense is that, you know, in the US right now, we publish 1,000 books a day. Most of the books don't make money. So this is the definition of a hit-driven business, where a handful of successful books pay for the cost of manufacturing and shipping these dead trees around to stores. And then when they don't sell, the covers are torn off and they're sent back on trucks. You have this giant carbon footprint on these books. And now a new platform has emerged. And the tablets that are coming out in huge numbers now. Apple sold 16 million last year. The expectation is that we'll sell somewhere between 30 and 60 million tablets this year. And these are all ebook readers. And my guess is that a large percentage of those 60 million people who buy those tablets are also book buyers. If they migrate to digital, how long will the economics support traditional book publishing? I'm looking at you, Federico, so you go first.
Well, I'd just like to quote my CEO for that. He
Smart.
said, is it print or is it digital? And the answer is it's print and digital. Mm-hmm. So we believe that the printing compartment's going to continue to exist for a long time. Of course, what you have to do is just find new business models that enable people to understand the value of both platforms. But actually, the demand for culture, the demand for entertainment, the demand for information is going higher.
That's true.
And all you got to do is just fulfill that demand by providing, as I was saying earlier on, all kinds of platforms that fulfill that demand. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are still going to continue reading books from paper because they like it that way. And it's quite unlikely, I think, that the industry will cease printing books, because not only because they've been there forever, of course, but people still continue to use those means of communication as you know, very important ones. So I don't see the printing compartment dying very soon, not at all.
Charlie, you're one step away from being a publisher. You do every function in the value chain.
Still one step.
You format the books, you provide all the pre-production services, you offer a turnkey bookstore, and basically you're every function in the value chain, and yet you're not a publisher. What's stopping you from becoming a book publisher and working directly with authors?
Nothing. But ultimately, in one, yeah, our customers. Okay. I don't want to be perceived as a threat to my customer base, and I think there's a danger in positioning ourselves as a publisher within the marketplace that we participate in now. I also agree with Federico. I don't see print dying out, and there's quite a lot of evidence to show that actually ebook buyers become print buyers and buy more print titles as a result of consuming ebooks. You also got to, we can't forget that in more developed markets, perhaps the ebook marketplace will grow and digital will grow massively and take perhaps even a lion's share by the next 5-10 years, etc. But we have a huge developing marketplace. We have school systems even in the developed markets who are not ready yet to embrace digital to the same extent that the consumer or trade industry is, and are going to still continue to rely on print. I do think there's an interesting opportunity emerging in the sort of used tablet market. Economy tablets are already coming to the marketplace. Asda in the UK is launching their own. And I'm sure with the iPad 2 now released, iPad 1s will start appearing and may already be on eBay. I haven't checked, at pretty low prices. I think there could be some interesting opportunities there as well.
Cool. I'd love to buy a used
More for
ebook
that
on my
question,
iPad.
so.
All right. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure chatting with all of you. We are running out of time. Is there a question from the floor? Because we could certainly grab one question. No. Oh, yes. Okay.
Thank you. So, so Netflix, I believe, the costs of them streaming films are just hugely less than the cost they used to incur mailing DVDs out. So I was going to ask, is there a similar kind of cost differential for ebooks as opposed to printed books?
You're the book publisher. Take
Right.
it.
Well, there is a difference, of course, because the product cycle is totally different. You're not printing, you're not delivering things on trucks, you're not filling bookstores, warehouses. So, I mean, it's totally different, of course. Most of the times, ebooks are cheaper than printed books. Am I answering your question with that?
I knew they would be cheaper. I was just curious. Maybe you don't want to reveal too much here, but maybe to the nearest 20% multiple, how much cheaper is it to do an ebook than a printed book?
Well, I guess it varies according to the relationship you have as an ebook distributor and the publishers. So I wouldn't say there's a fixed percentage that can be disclosed now, but it's not a matter of keeping it secret. I mean, you just go to the bookstore, you check the price go just on bold.it, you see the price of a book which can be delivered as a printed edition and its ebook edition, and you just make a ratio out of it and get it.
But in the U.S., the U.S. publishers ganged up on Amazon and insisted that Amazon raise the price of digital books for Kindle. And they did this simply because they wanted to defend their margins and extract more money out of this. Amazon's been very, very outspokenly in favor of dropping the price dramatically, and they're actually pushing, books that are under $10, and they'll offer authors favorable splits. And of course, there's predictions out there. Kevin Kelly, the technology futurist, has predicted that most books will sell for 99 cents in the future, because there's effectively no cost of distribution. To answer the question, once a book's been formatted in e-format, getting it out to people, that's trivial.
Well,
Charlie, yeah. Go.
How about intellectual rights, though? Hey.
And actually getting it out to people isn't trivial for most publishers or authors even. I mean, getting your ebook out to the mass marketplace, making it discoverable is sometimes a challenge. And we've just gone through this whole process looking at print on demand and looking at ebook distribution for clients on a sort of white label basis and managed service as part of a broader proposition. And the aggregators and distributors, the likes of Ingram with Lightning Source, Bertram's, Gardner's, it's pretty complicated. I won't tell you which one, but
right.
I love the fact that I can sit down with those guys and they won't tell me who they'll distribute through, because I might approach those channels direct myself. What? You're going to provide me a service, charge me a huge whack for distributing, and yet you're not going to tell me who you're going to push it through. And actually, for an individual author, it's very, very difficult. And there are a select portfolio of, retailers who'll work with certain distributors and not with others. So it is actually a challenge.
So it's trickier to navigate that transition than I thought.
And that's where the costs are in
Right.
ebooks, actually, and that's why
So
a
it's
lot
in
of
the
publishers want to
merchandising,
protect.
promotion, distribution. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time, but I certainly have enjoyed this conversation. Thank you all very much for joining. How about a round of applause for our speaker?
Thank you.